Welcome back to the Fem Health Podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Erin Sheffield. She's an oral maxillofacial surgeon practicing in Quincy, Illinois. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, I'd love to start talking about when should we be brushing our children's teeth? How old? When's the right time?
That's a great question. So, pretty much anyone who has a tooth or any teeth, they need to be brushed. So, when you have a baby, we do want you to start cleaning those teeth. It doesn't always have to be a toothbrush. If they just have like one or two incisors on the bottom, you could start with just like a gentle damp cloth and just wiping those clean a couple times a day, especially at bedtime. That's the most important point. But we definitely want you cleaning those teeth. And I do get a lot of patients or friends, community members asking me, should we be using toothpaste or fluoride? And that's kind of a big thing. The consensus has changed on that a little bit. I think a lot of the older recommendations were to not use fluoride because we're worried about the toxicity of that. But there are benefits to fluoride, even for little children. So what we really want you to do is just very heavily regulate how much toothpaste they're getting. So I'd never want little kids brushing their teeth by themselves, mostly because of the toothpaste. So I want the parent distributing that as a medication. It is toxic in high levels, systemically toxic, but also can be damaging for your teeth if you get too much. So when you have a baby, it's just we call it a schmear. It's a technical term. It's just a tiny smear, so just a very, very tiny dab on the tip of the last couple bristles. As I get a little more toddler age, maybe like grain of rice size amount, and then older children who can spit or adults, pea size amount. But you don't need to use those big swooping amounts that they use, even for adults on the commercials.
Yes, they just want to sell more
Yes,
toothpaste.
I do.
So, fluoride is okay for all age babies, like 6 months or younger?
Anyone with a tooth, fluoride's great, but again, you just really want to be careful how much they're getting.
Okay. And I guess a lot of people wonder, why would I even brush the baby's teeth if they're just going to fall out?
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about that, and it can be heartbreaking, especially for me. I'm not a general dentist, so I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon. So I'm kind of the end of the line doctor when a tooth can't be saved. And we get those cases where a child will come in and every tooth will be decayed so bad it needs to come out. And so, pain, abscess, certainly no one wants their children to suffer through that. But the other thing is, you need your teeth to smile. You need your teeth for speech development and socially, and for chewing and to getting your nutrition. And so, even though they're baby teeth and we can look at them maybe as dispensable, they're super important as a child is developing for their health, for their psychosocial development. Other thing is that they actually maintain and hold space for the permanent dentition. So, if we lose teeth early, we could be worrying about orthodontic problems in the future. So, they do play a very important role. They're not just it's just a baby tooth, just pull it. Sometimes that's necessary, but even so, you might need to do a space maintainer or something like that to try to help. But we certainly don't want to see our kiddos having pain or infection or getting an emergency situation.
So is that the main reason people get crooked teeth, is because the teeth fall out too quickly and they grow in crooked?
There are a lot of reasons for that. That certainly tends to lead to some problems. But even if your teeth were great as a kid, one thing that happens is just there's not a lot of space. So my kids, they have that beautiful Hollywood smile right now. They don't have any gaps in their teeth. And that's actually not a good thing as a dentist and orthodontist because our adult teeth are so much bigger than the baby teeth that we need that spacing. So when they come in, if there's no space, then you tend to get orthodontic problems. So sometimes it's just a misalignment with the size of the jaws and the size of the teeth. Sometimes it's actually a jaw development problem. If you don't get a full development of your jaws, then that can cause problems with crowding as well.
Is there something that you can do to sort of optimize your jaw health or like the development of the jaw?
That's an interesting question. I think that's kind of a hot topic right now. So you might be hearing about like myofunctional therapy. It's really having its heyday right now. Tongue ties, lip ties are really a big topic right now with like lactation and speech and in the dental community. We haven't fully come to a consensus, unfortunately, on some of those. But there is this idea that, maybe we're not using our jaw muscles as much as we did when we ate a more traditionally in caveman style diet. We're not ripping flesh and we're
Yeah.
not chewing really hard grains. And so maybe that isn't stimulating the development of the jaws as much. Sometimes airway allergy type things might be contributing as well. But I think it's multifactorial, and that's not the answer for everyone.
Yeah. So lots of different things.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad if your kids have crooked teeth, basically.
No, and early intervention is important. So I know the Orthodontic Association recommends seeing an orthodontist by age about 7. And people hear that and they're like, why would I go at that age? That seems ridiculous. Or I hear a lot of people, why would they put braces on 2 times? It's so early. But sometimes if we can do that early intervention, we can really prevent some major problems down the line. So it's not a scam. Your orthodontist isn't trying to get away with something, but some people will need braces or something done very early, and it will help prevent major problems. Some people will be fine waiting till, teenage years, etc.
Okay. And I wanted to ask one more question about brushing that I forgot to
Yeah.
ask, which is what kind of toothbrush should you use for your kid? Should you use an electric toothbrush? Should you use a regular toothbrush? Should you use some special thing that you see online?
Yeah, there are a lot of scammy dental products, unfortunately. I tend to think those ones where you just like put the tray in and let us do its job, probably not adequate. Um, any toothbrush, manual or electric, is probably okay. I switched to electric for my kids lately and I've been loving it. I think it just really gives you that extra oomph, It's just an extra tool. And so I think that's really helpful. You might have to consider your child though. Like it is a lot of vibration, especially if maybe you're neurodivergent or have some sensory issues that might be a little too much for them. But if you start early, they might get used to it as well. But I think the biggest thing I would say is using a toothbrush, and even for adults, that's small enough to get all the way back in the area and to do the job. So we tend to use too firm a toothbrush, too big toothbrushes, even as adults. So always a soft toothbrush, regardless of who you are. I prefer a small head so you can really get in and around those corners. And then one thing I would suggest, we always think about brushing in the bathroom, right?
Mhm.
And we don't want a big, messy, slobbery kid all over. But most kids, especially when we're starting, if they're babies, that's not going to work very well to be maneuvering our baby in the bathroom. So usually dentists are going to recommend like lie them in your lap, and then, you have direct vision and you can just gently brush. And then if you're using just that tiny smear of toothpaste, they don't really have anything they have to spit, and you don't have to worry about too much of them swallowing
I wonder if I could
toxic
try that with my
mess.
9-year-old and just be like,
I mean, I still do. I still brush. Probably most kids should be getting a parent brushing their teeth up until probably about age or 8 or 9. For mine, I'm starting to let them brush a little more independently, but we still at least, every couple of nights I'm making sure I'm getting in there and checking, just because most kids aren't capable of doing a good
they're
enough
not.
job.
They're definitely not. I wish they were.
Well, it would be so wonderful if they were.
So let's shift gears a bit. How does oral health relate to pregnancy?
So there are a lot of things I think we're learning about that. One thing that we've known for a long time is that periodontal disease or inflammation in the mouth is associated with preterm babies and low birth weight babies. So it's definitely having a big enough systemic effect on your health that it can affect the pregnancy and the baby. It can also affect the mother's health. Like, it's interesting how people who have really healthy gums and maybe you're a great brusher and flosser, all of a sudden you're getting, a big flare up of gingivitis, or you can get certain growths like pyogenic granulomas or things like that growing on the gums. There is kind of this myth that leaches calcium and every baby you have, you lose one tooth, It's kind of this old wives' tale.
Yeah.
And in dental school, we were always taught like that's not true and it's not leaching calcium, etc. But I think we're starting to find it does cause some changes in the mouth that maybe affect saliva or pH or whatever it is. So there might actually be something to it that it does change the health of the mouth a little bit. That might make you a little more prone to decay. I would say the other part of it too is just when you're pregnant, so much is changing. Your diet, I remember being so sick I couldn't get out of bed unless I had some saltine crackers, and like, is that the best way to start my morning, by eating crackers in bed, or then I'd go to brush my teeth and I would gag and throw up, so there's all these different changes, the foods you're eating, the frequency of eating, your ability to care for yourself. And then when baby comes, I don't know about you, but for me, it was almost worse. Like,
Yeah.
my schedule was all over the place. My routine, you'd be like going 4 days and like, I haven't showered and I hope I brushed my teeth. So
Yeah.
all of that plays in as well.
Absolutely. I thought, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but there's an increase in blood flow to the gums too during pregnancy. Is that right?
I haven't seen information on that, but it makes sense with the extra blood flow just in general. I
Yeah,
would think
I
that would
just
have to
suspect
be
I think that's just
true.
physiologic. Yeah, but
Yes.
that's why I thought my dental health got worse in pregnancy. I was like, I had perfect dentition before that.
Yeah.
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 Let's talk about TMJ. What is TMJ?
So I love this question. TMJ is your temporomandibular joint. So when people say I have TMJ, I kind of laugh because it's like saying I have knee or I have elbow. I say, yeah, you do. And I do too. We have two. So, but usually what people mean when they say I have TMJs, it means they're having some kind of problems with their TMJ. And so technically the term would be TMD, temporomandibular joint disorder. So that's a very non-specific diagnosis. It basically just means a problem with the jaw. Okay. And there's a bunch of different specific diagnoses that you can have. But for most people, it's going to be some component of pain, maybe some joint noises, clicking, popping, things like that.
What about like clenching at night? That's a dysfunction as well, right? Because I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people have that one.
Yeah, we see that a lot. It can be problematic for a few reasons. One, people might get headaches or other issues when they wake up. You just don't feel good. You have that tension from that. But it can break the teeth. We see a lot of cracking of the teeth when people are clenching and grinding. And then you might even wear your teeth down. So you just, shave off the top slowly over time. Once you do that, we can't really repair or replace that part of the tooth. So that's an issue. But it, might also lead to some temporomandibular joint dysfunction or be a side effect of that. It's a chicken or the egg.
Why do we see that more women have this than men?
I've thought about that a lot. I think it's really interesting. I assume it has to be at least partially hormonal.
Hmm.
It seems to show up a lot in like teenage adolescent girls going through puberty kind of timeline. And it seems to be worse for women during those more hormonal stages. And then as you get older, it tends to go away. So I think there's probably a lot of different factors to it, but I think there must be that as well. I also think there's a little bit of misogyny in medicine or dentistry when we're talking about TMJ. I remember in residency, it was just like the feared console, like, oh no, the TMJ patient. And it was almost always a woman. And like those crazy TMJ patients, those crazy TMJ, they're
That's
so
in
crazy. They're
everything.
always crazy, right? Well, I started to realize, and everyone else has probably realized too, but all of those things were like the fibromyalgia that mostly happens for women. We can't explain it, so they're crazy. And the TMJ patients, we can't really explain it. It's mostly in women, and they're crazy. And the vertigo patients, there's a pattern, and TMJ is definitely that way. And so in my practice, I kind of dread the TMJ patient a little bit, partially just because I spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
I give them like 45 minutes to an hour of my time. I don't get paid extra to do that, but for me, so much of that is just hearing them,
Yeah.
hearing what they've been going through, letting them explain how this has affected their life, and then show them. I draw pictures, I show them the anatomy, and I explain the process of what's going on. And I think there's something so validating that, like, there's not anything wrong
You.
with
Yeah.
you.
With your brain.
There's an anatomical issue with your jaw, and there are luckily things most of the time conservative management is going to take care of it. It's rarely a surgical problem, and we can get you through this, but you have a real problem, and it's just the anatomy. It's not you being crazy. And I think for me, it's worth spending that extra time, and most of them don't come back. Maybe they're mad at me because I didn't help them enough or something, but I think it's because they felt like, okay, I could see, and we have some strategies, and I might be the first person that ever really listened to them and took their problems seriously.
So what causes it?
Most people, when they have TMJ problems, it has to do with the disc in the jaw. So just like other parts of our body where we have cartilage, cushioning, and discs, we do in our jaw as well. And I think our jaw, the orthopedic surgeons might be mad at me, but I think our jaw joint is probably the most complex joint in our body for a couple of reasons. Our elbow is like a hinge, and our hip is like a ball in a socket, and they kind of just do one kind of movement, but our jaw does a couple different things. The first thing is it's a rotational movement. So to open the first couple centimeters, it's kind of like turning a doorknob, and then it has to glide down like a ski jump. And so to do both of those, I think that's kind of a tricky movement. The other thing is it's attached to another joint. So I can't
Mhm.
think of anywhere else in our body if I'm missing something. So it's attached to another joint. We're constantly using it all day, swallowing, talking, breathing, and then we're putting huge forces and we're loading that joint really hard. So I think a lot of it, the dysfunction comes from just wear and tear, inflammation. But what happens for most people, and it's a lot of people, about 30% of people have that clicking and popping of their jaw. And that's because that disc that's on there gets out of position, it moves anteriorly, and then it can do that hinge movement just fine. But the gliding, there's a speed bump there. So you have to click that back into place to be able to open or to close, and that's why you get that clicking sound. So if that degenerates and becomes worse and doesn't come back into position, then that's when you really start having problems. Your jaw might lock closed and things like that, and that might require surgery. But thankfully, most of us, including myself, who are clicking and popping, it might cause a little inflammation or muscles might get kind of off track. It's kind of like getting a Charlie horse in your face because things are inflamed and the muscles are spasming. And so if we can get that under control, most of the time we can kind of take care of that with some simple strategies. But a lot of people are like, "Oh, my husband complains because when I'm eating steak, he can hear it popping across the table." That's just common for a lot of people, and that's why it's called anterior disc displacement.
Interesting. So I always thought it was like a muscular, like a tension. Is there also some physiology that's a tension?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the disc anatomy, the internal derangement of the joint is causing that clicking and popping. And if you're just doing that and you're not having symptoms, that
It
might
is what
just
it
be
is.
normal for
Yeah.
you. But again, the problem is the analogy I like to use is that if I hurt my right knee and so I was on crutches,
Mhm.
what's gonna happen to the left side of my body? Like, maybe my left hip starts hurting or because 'cause we're compensating. So I think that's what happens. Your jaw and your muscles, everything's trying to get it in a more comfortable position, and in doing that, it puts things out of alignment. Your bite and your teeth might not be lining up correctly. The muscles are being kinda stretched, inflammation is getting in the area, and then you get what's called myofascial pain. So, usually, if we can get that myofascial pain under control with anti-inflammatories, maybe changing your diet, soft diet, maybe some steroids or muscle relaxants or even antidepressants. There's kind of a big list of things that we can do. If we can maybe get you a mouth guard if you're clenching so that we're not putting pressure and extra, stress on the jaw, then we can relieve that muscle. And so that's usually where the dysfunction for most people is coming is from the muscles. So you're right about that.
And then is there a role for Botox?
Yes. So that is kind of a newer thing that we're doing. It could be really nice because, again, if you're doing that clenching and grinding, if you're getting those spasms, then that's one way to kind of knock out your ability to really do that at night or to do that. I had one patient that she was clenching and grinding so much, it was a compulsion, she couldn't stop, and even though she knew she was doing it, like, 24/7, she just couldn't stop, and it was causing her so much pain, and her masseters were just bulging. So, we were able to do Botox for a couple of years, and her face changed, and her life changed, and sh if someone was just getting out of the habit,
Yeah.
and
Then she
she
could start.
yeah, and after a couple years, we didn't have to do it anymore because her muscles didn't remember to keep doing that compulsion, so it can be helpful. Unfortunately, since it's off-label use for Botox, it can be expensive because insurance is often going to say that, it's elective and they don't wanna do it, but some people will meet criteria for that to be paid for.
Thank you so much. This has been so educational. Where can people find you?
I am on Instagram or TikTok as Dr. Erin Sheffield.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Thank you.